Sagittarius, hey, hey. All right, Saggies, I want to take a look at how do they feel right now. Actually, let's go with this deck, Sag. Here we go. How do they feel right now? Hanged Man, we may have a Pisces. They may be looking at everything from a totally different perspective right now. Um, Somebody could have like a long braided hair. They've got dark hair. Um, and it feels like um, if they do have long hair that they braid, that could represent also their thoughts are like, multifaceted. We have the Fool and we have that Five of Cups sideways. This is somebody who's looking at things differently and saying, I don't know that I would be able to chalk this up to, oh, I guess it's too late. In fact, I think I would rather do the reverse and take this leap of faith and maybe get into this situation. I'd like to cross that boundary, that barrier. I'd like to take that leap and get to this. Knight of Swords. They're developing this idea that instead of waiting any longer, because I think that the sitting and the waiting is no good. They're almost ready to just take a leap instead and say something, speak up, do something, talk to Sag, because this is not working. The silence is unpleasant. This is definitely somebody who maybe this was like they were on the verge of saying, I guess things are over with Sag, and they're like, or I do the exact reverse and I talk to Sag. Okay, they are realizing I have so much more hope. I had so much hope for this connection. I want this connection. I want something to grow. I want something to heal. I almost think that this character, by the way, they could also be an Aries, possibly Libra, Gemini, Aquarius as well. But they were thinking, I guess there's nothing to do. And then it feels like they got a message from an ancestor, or they took a long walk out in a park and something like really started to fill their mind up with, how like in the wintertime we don't see anything growing, but then there's signs of spring that pop up and it's like, wow, you know what? Everything can renew. So why couldn't this? And I kind of feel like a combination of, I don't want to give up. The truth of it is, why would I ever throw in the towel on something that I actually want? In fact, why don't I do the exact reverse and fight harder for something? It feels like that's the way their mind is like boomeranging on this. Yeah, Judgment card sideways. They know it's not necessarily just going to be them who gets to make the decision, because obviously Sag will get to have their opinion in what happens or doesn't happen. But here they are, frolicking in the forest. I also think that they ask themselves, am I really somebody who just rolls over and says, oh, it's hopeless, it's helpless, there's nothing I can do? That is not really who they are. They are somebody who stands for more. They are somebody who actually does take positive action. And with the Two of Pentacles, I feel like their thought process has been to weigh things and say, honestly, if I talk to Sag and I say, I don't want to let this go, I actually want to fight for this. Here's my ideas. What do you think? Like, they're very willing to hash it out. Like, and I don't know if they were like this before. Can I just ask, character, where had you been? Where had your mind been prior to this? Were you, of a more flexible frame of mind? Or is this kind of a new development for you? We have a Queen of Wands. At one point in time, maybe they thought, well, Sag doesn't want to negotiate. I either have to make sure that I can, be everything that Sag wants. Otherwise, I mean, obviously I can't stick around because this won't work. I'm wondering if they had told themselves something that was untrue. Yeah, Justice card sideways. They definitely had told themselves something that was untrue. They were basically taking themselves out of the game. Sag is this amazing Queen of Wands. Sag knows just what they want. Sag knows the way they want their life to go. And if I can't measure up and fit that, then of course Sag won't stay with me. But I don't think they asked Sag what their opinion was. This is somebody who's about to tap out and say, never mind, I'll just let this relationship go. Because obviously I couldn't be able to, measure up, match up. I don't know if Sag has some interesting sandals that are like gladiator sandals or something. They don't just look like Birks. They look like, like lace up the front, or maybe like boots that are a little open toed that, lace up a little bit. They're still like lower boots, or sandals or heels or something, but there's definitely crisscross laces across the front of the top of the foot and up the ankle. And then certainly Sag could have a cat. It's interesting because they may have a picture or an image somewhere of like a panther, or maybe they have a very sleek like way of moving, like kind of a slinky. I wonder if there's like I don't know if Sag has like a little black dress or something that looks particularly amazing on them with those little sandal boots. I don't know, but they may have a cat or cat-like tendencies. We see kind of a striped cat. Oftentimes we'll see a black cat on the Queen of Wands, but here we have like a bit of a tiger striper. Kind of looks like Indiana, my family's cat, Indiana. Of course, actually, our other two cats are also striped, but they're gray with stripes, and Indiana is darker. Fezzik and Cleo are both the gray stripes. I got to put a picture of them up pretty soon because they're beautiful now that they're not kittens anymore. They're quite chubby adult cats. We have got the Strength card and we've got the Emperor. What they're realizing is honestly the only thing that maybe Sag expects is that they know what they want. And they're like, well, I know what I want. I want that gorgeous Sag. Handsome, gorgeous, beautiful, attractive, however we want to look at it. I wonder if Sag has really great legs too. But they're saying what I needed to do was just get solid in myself. We have a volcano both times on both of these cards, by the way. And I'm thinking that this is the representation of them having needed to get their desire worked out, know what you want and then speak. It's like the eruption of words that are like, wait a minute, I know what I'm doing. I am direct in what I want. For some reason, can I just explore a little bit more? Why were you ever not in your Emperor era? By the way, we do have Leo and Aries coming out and Libra. 5 of Swords. I don't know if they were busy fighting with themselves. 5 of Swords is usually fighting, wanting to win. Did you have a fight with Sag? Is that what happened? We have the Chariot sideways. Yeah, they actually could have had a fight with Sag because it was like, what are you doing? What are your intentions? Where are you going? What do you want? A simple question, which could be construed as like, isn't it nice when somebody says, like, think of when you go to a restaurant and a server comes over and says, what would you like to order? That's them, asking, what can I get for you? How can I help you? That's not somebody being like, well, God, what are you asking me that for? Like, what do you expect? I'm supposed to have all the answers. Well, yes, ma'am or sir, you came to the restaurant. You got to let us know what you'd like, It's actually a courtesy to be asked, what do you want? And I just feel like for a hot minute, they looked at it as like, oh, my God, what are you doing? Asking me what I want. And then they realized, wait a minute, that's a fair question. Not one to get hostile over, but basically, what direction do you want to take this connection? What do you want to do? What are your plans? Who are you? Basically, is what Sag might have been asking them. And for a hot minute, I think they took it as, you're asking me to be able to like navigate this entire planet. And it's like, no, Sag was just simply asking, what would you like? The same way a server asks, what do you want to order? I think that they are seeing it in such a different lens now. Sag wasn't like judging them to see how good is your plan. Let me see if you're crappy or crummy and you don't really have any, life direction. That's not what this was. Sag wanted to know who they were and maybe wanted to know, like basically, what do you want with you and me? It could have been a question about that. 9 of Wands sideways. The only reason they bristled so much is, and they don't think that they realize it, but that was a trigger for them because of an old wound. That was either somebody made them feel like crap before. Maybe somebody did used to ask them questions just to kind of like needle them and be like, so what are you going to do about that? There's different ways Somebody can come up and ask you a question, and they can be rude, condescending, and nasty, or they can ask you a question and it's clear that they're just curious and interested and want to know you better. And I'm thinking that they had someone that was rude and condescending at some point. And I think that that was like a flashback for them. And then they realize, wait a minute, I'm applying that to Sag. My trigger is being asked, what do you want to do? Which direction are we going? What would you like? And instead they were like, they were remembering someone else's voice with a totally different intention of that question. Seven of Swords. Maybe they even thought it was accusatory, like somebody was accusing them of lying, of being suspicious. That could be the other reason. They were like, oh man, that, obviously Sag doesn't have any faith in me. I think this is saying Sag was simply asking them, what are we going to do? Let me ask Sag, because there was obviously a meltdown. There was a fight in this storyline, right? And I think it was Sag asking them, where are we going or what's happening? Hanged Man. Sag didn't know. Remember, they started out as a hanged man. Here they are again as the hanged man. Sag is like, hey, what are you thinking about? Or, what's your vision on something? I can tell you're turning it over in your head. And I'm wondering, as we have kind of some delay in you telling me what your thoughts are, what is the intention? Because now we have the Eight of Wands. Again, Eight of Wands is taking action, having communication versus being totally silent and delaying communication. So, I think it makes perfect sense that Sag would ask those questions. Like, what are we doing? What would you like to do? This is not to be nasty or rude or anything like that. With that Eight of Wands in particular, Six of Wands. If anything, I think Sag had a lot of confidence in them. Sag has confidence in themselves as well. This might have been like a straight up wonderful courtesy that Sag was just like, it could even be that Sag said, hey, what did you do while I was sleeping? Maybe Sag and this person like work different, they're in the dark underworld and Sag sleeps, in the opposite time. And they're like, hey, what did you do, while I was sleeping? Not like, what did you do while I was sleeping? Inflection of voice is everything. And I feel like I don't see anything here where Sag was like, oh, I don't trust them. Oh, I don't. I think it was like a natural, simple conversation that they got hostile over. Some question of, I don't think Sag trusts me, when that's not what Sag said. Sag, do you care about this person? Do you want to be with this person? High Priestess. Sag says, there we have like an undercurrent, but with this undercurrent, with this vibe, Sag is saying, but I am picturing or picking up on the fact that this person has some toxicity. I got a little hint of it, a whiff of it. Three of Swords. Sag might be getting worried. They might break my heart, or I'm sensing they had a broken heart and they're not over it yet. Which is it? Emperor upright, King of Swords. No, I think this person is really fortunate because it seems like Sag is going to be very patient with them. It seems like Sag says, I sense that sometimes they lash out or they bite or they get scared or they must have been treated real crappily by somebody and they have actually had a heartbreak. And I think this person is a much better person. I think that they are an emperor. I think that they have to realize, though, that not everybody treats them the same. It almost feels like Sag is looking at this person as they're a wonderful person who's been treated poorly, and it's going to take time for them to trust. It's going to take time for them to quit being defensive. They do withdraw. I think that this person, maybe unbeknownst to Sag, had actually withdrawn and was all bummed, and then they kind of thought themselves through it and were like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I don't want to break up with Sag. Sag is actually really nice. I keep freaking out. It's me doing this to myself. So they seem to be working through. This is somebody that damn near broke up with Sag, even though Sag didn't even know it, except in their subconscious. They were like, I feel like this person is still, they might have suddenly withdrawn, or Sag hasn't heard from them in a little bit because they were triggered. And then they had to work through that thought process. The one thing that's great about this, I mean, it's not great that they're always on the fringe of like running away from Sag, but they're catching themselves and they're still processing instead of like, never mind, Sag, I'm not going to be with you. They're not trying to, accuse Sag of things except in the way they feel, and they can't help the way they feel, but then they're processing it and actually like getting a hold of their thoughts around this, which means they are actively still working through, their triggers. But it looks like on one hand, even though Sag is aware that that's going on, they're not directly making it Saggy's problem. They don't want to lose Sag. That's the truth of it. And they're realizing I need to look at my behavior. So maybe this person's going to keep processing. I mean, that could mean that they are a little funky, a little hot and cold. But I think Sag is pretty steady and steadfast and saying, I think that they're a great person. I just think that they have to work through what they're working through, We have 5 of Pentacles. We have 9 of Wands. Sag is like, I already understand. They're going to run, and retreat a little bit here and there. That's what they have to do to process it. I can see it. I can sense it. I can feel it. Sag, are you going to like just allow this to kind of unveil as it unveils? With the 5 of Wands says, I'm going to keep thinking about it. I'm going to pay attention to the way they behave. I'm going to pay attention to how frequently they have to like withdraw and go work on stuff. Sag is saying, I don't know that I want to let myself get to where I'm stuck waiting for when they get, if every little thing triggers them and then they withdraw and I don't hear from them for a bit and then I'm stuck waiting to hear from them again. Sag will make note of that and they will determine how much of that they tolerate. At some point, they may even say, I'm going to have a conversation with them and be like, so is there something you want to talk to me about, about what you're dealing with or something? Or Sag is saying, I'm waiting until they are able to come to a conclusion on their own about their behavior. And then maybe they can present it to me. I kind of already know what's up, but I'm not going to, be stuck all the time waiting for their triggers to pass. So then they show back up in my life and I'm like, okay, well, I probably won't hear from them for another 3 days because they're freaking out about something. I think Sag wants to be able to say, we have to be able to get on the same page where I can rely on you, that that I'm not here to hurt you. So when you get to that belief system, then at that point, especially you don't really have the excuse of running or of not giving fully to me. So I think that reality conversation is coming because I see Sag being very patient, but not necessarily saying, okay, I just have to wait while they deal with all of their, I trigger them all the time because they haven't processed stuff. And I just have to always wonder how long will it be this time before they talk to me again. I think Sag is patient and gentle with this person, but within a range where there has to be progress. And I kind of think that there will be here. All right, I'm going to leave this here. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for giving it a thumbs up and subscribing.